So this video is about the 1991-92 Miami Heat, and perhaps some may be thinking, what's so special about this Heat team? Well, for basketball historians, their answer might be absolutely nothing. But for me, this team was memorable because it was the first expansion team from the NBA modern expansion era to make the playoffs. So in the late 80s, the NBA, they added 4 new teams, as each of these franchises had very distinct logos and color schemes from the rest of the NBA as their team apparel was popular. It was rough starting out for each of these franchises, which was also the case for future expansion franchises like the Toronto Raptors, Vancouver Grizzlies, and Charlotte Bobcats. As for the Miami Heat, for each of their first 3 seasons, the team would improve. Enter the 91-92 NBA season, and the Heat looked like they were the best of the 4 new NBA teams, as a big part of that was due to their draft selections. And I just want to point out that at this time, Larry Johnson was a rookie with Charlotte, and Alonzo Mourning was still in college, and Orlando had not yet drafted Shaq and Penny, and then there's Minnesota, which really struggled until Kevin Garnett came to the Twin Cities. But anyways, the 91-92 Miami Heat, this was their most common starting lineup, and I also think it's the best lineup from a talent standpoint. All these players were acquired through the draft, as the Heat did a pretty solid job on draft day. Taking a look at the first 4 names, that's a talented youthful squad. Now, although a top tier player is missing, nonetheless, it's a pretty decent quartet going forward with Glenn Rice, Grant Long, Ronnie Cycli, and Steve Smith. Now, the 5th person on this list is Willie Burton. He had talent but had injury issues throughout his career, along with depression. But Burton, for one game, did show a scoring ability, as he did score 53 points in a game for Philadelphia against Miami. After about a month, the Heat released him in 1994. But as for the rest of the Heat, Miami, they received contributions from several players who were also young and inexperienced. I do also want to point out that the Heat, they did draft a pretty solid point guard in the second round of the '89 NBA draft in Sherman Douglas, but traded him during the 91-92 season after a holdout for Brian Shaw. So the 91-92 Miami Heat, the youngest team in the NBA. And one reason why I really like this team is that I began watching basketball as a kid in the late 80s, and I love seeing an NBA team where I saw a great majority of the players play in college. Furthermore, they were fun to watch. Now during the season, Miami, they did suffer at the time the biggest blowout loss in NBA history to the Cleveland Cavaliers, but I'm not going to get into that, as this video is about Miami making their first ever playoff appearance as they clinched on the final day of the regular season despite losing to the Boston Celtics. But also Atlanta, they lost on the final day, as Miami and Atlanta had the same record, but the Heat had the tiebreaker. So Miami is going to the playoffs, and I love seeing an expansion franchise make it to the postseason with so much youth and so many players I saw play college ball. The Miami Heat made the playoffs with a 38-44 record. Yes, 6 games under 500, but I didn't care. I told everyone at school that Miami was going to upset the top seed and defending champs, the Chicago Bulls, in the first round. And then, of course, I was greatly incorrect as the Bulls swept the Heat, but nonetheless, the 1991-1992 Miami Heat was one of my favorite NBA teams ever, and I will always remember them as the first expansion team to make the playoffs during the NBA modern expansion era. Real quick, I just want to thank all those who have supported 90 Sports Nostalgia. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, and check out the links below for Patreon. Thank you so much. The 1991-1992 Miami Heat.